reclaiming sort of Americana and like, it's ours, you know? Like, we can't let the fascists have it. And so it's in that spirit that I wrote this cartoon western. And it takes place in a fictional West Texas town called Lo Siento. So tonight I'm going to read it. Basically what happens is it sort of captures the fallout of this catastrophic chili cook-off. It follows like 7 perspectives, 7 characters, and sort of is like, where are they now? And tonight is historic in the sense that I've usually only had 2 beers before I've read, but tonight I've had 3 Palomas, so we'll see how it goes. Alright. Alright, Duke hollered. I gave you a chance. But since you want to do this the hard way, I'll give you to the count of 3 instead. He looked at Reverend Francis, who was coated in a sweat. We got some of the baddest men in the whole state of Texas out here waiting for you. In his heart, of course, Duke had already grasped the tragedy. He sensed palpably the time that had slipped, which had gotten away from him, the silent disappearance of the stakeout which had once brought him such joy. His righteous enthusiasm, the rush of the thrill, stolen in seconds by radical evil. Justice, forgiveness, the sheriff believed, could be a simple thing, unfurling above the letter of the law with the grace of the most beautiful tapestry. If only the ethical inclination could be passed on as easily, say, as a good joke, to give each an understanding of his civic devotion, by which he may uphold his duty to himself, to his fellow citizen, to democracy. This was the sheriff's sole purpose, and it was only upon reaching this singular point that he felt he could finally rest. Like Moses in his desert, Duke thought aloud. What? Reverend Francis whispered. That's an Exodus, Duke told him. Then he said, quiet, Frank. Duke knew first and foremost that he had to appeal to the stern authority of the ultimatum. And so, with an expenditure of effort he had reserved for just so dire a circumstance, he brought forth the surliest string of words he could conjure in his head. You sorry coward, he called into the bridge. It echoed inside like it was coming off a mountain. You low, good-for-nothing, lousy, sorry coward. It caused Duke great pain, and even Reverend Francis grimaced sourly at the words, though he went on balancing masterfully the mag light, the beer, the sleeve of onion rings, and the package. Duke started to count. 1, sudden movement in the bridge. 2, the snap of a twig in the darkness. Reverend Francis gulped. Give me one of them onion rings, Duke whispered quietly, and Reverend Francis extended one like a deep-fried halo on his fingertip. When at last Duke had swallowed every morsel of the breading, by now grown quite soggy, he took a deep breath and pled his final count. 3. They wasted no time moving in on the bridge. We're moving in, Duke called out ahead. As they advanced within the tunnel, the beam of the mag light tightened, and Reverend Francis held it fast directly in front of the sheriff. Beyond the orb, darkness lay everywhere, touched everything, so stifling was the grasp which it leveraged upon the world. There was nothing in that place which this void did not lay claim to, extinguishing even the hope that the 2 men had carried on within them. But there was no one inside. I don't get it, Duke at full volume now, closing the bad eye against the cigarette smoke. We followed him to the bridge. He should be right here. Well, Reverend Francis remarked, not unreasonably, but we never seen him go inside. Duke grunted. Maybe come out the other end. He looked over at the Reverend and he shook his head sadly. There's endless possibilities, considerations to be had. The truth of the matter is, man really never knows. In silence, Duke walked almost peacefully about the belly of the bridge, running the palm of his hand along the cool concrete wall. He scanned the pockmarked surfaces, the graffiti-colored panels, looking it all over for nothing in particular. What was the bridge, he wondered? Why did it exist? How long it had been here, and from where did it come? The space he was within, or so it seemed to Duke, belonged as much to the limit above him as to the ground beneath his feet. And yet in another, much less practical sense, he knew it existed independently. That this great empty cavern could be known, excavated, even remembered, meant for Duke that it was properly considered in its singularity. The bridge had an essence. But the question, which had plagued Duke time and time again throughout the years, was not one of why, but rather, how? Simply, how could a hole standing open in the world constitute the grounds of its own very existence? Yes, as the Reverend edged the mag light against the surface of the bridge, it was these very questions in which the sheriff was adrift. After a moment, he just whistled to himself, then turned back to face Reverend Francis. "Well, Frank," he started to say, but whatever was to come next, no one will ever know. Because from somewhere deep within that empty fissure came a bone-lurching devil snarl. "Bastard has a dog," Duke growled. He drew his gun. He pointed at the mag light and he gestured up ahead, Reverend Francis lighting his path on down the tunnel. Inside the structureless den of pure yonder that laid ahead, the beast roared savagely, unfeelingly, with a terrible and godless ire. "We got you now," Duke called into the night. As they drew inward, ever near this throbbing nerve of terror, the growl began to mount until it reached a heightened pitch. It was so pervasive, so ubiquitous now, that the two felt they had come to hold space within it. The Reverend wept. They kept on moving. And in these, the last and final precious moments of their lives, it was not a question for them when or whether they had acted by virtue. They simply persevered and they pressed on toward the end of the tunnel, where finally the growling gave way to a little whimper. They stood at ease. Come out, wherever you are," the Reverend sang like a Sunday hymn. "Why," he said, "we ain't gonna hurt you. We was just curious, that's all." At the sound of his voice, the dog inched slowly into the light, its poor, mangy features illuminated throughout. What was believed a moment ago to be a gnarled and heinous creature was revealed in the colorless light as a sickly, impoverished mutt. "Probably got some kind of coyote in it," Duke said beneath his breath. He spat. "Quick, Frank, get the package." Reverend Francis huffed. "Shoot," he said. With some effort, he shuffled carefully the provisions he was tasked with, the onion rings, the beer, the mag light, and the package, opening the box and producing the little bag. He unwound a zip tie. The bag expanded in his hand. And when it was finished, it had opened onto a half-eaten pouch of Jack Link's beef jerky. "That's the good stuff," he whispered. "Easy now." Reverend Francis lowered the jerky to the ground. They both watched the little dog as it sniffed his hand sadly, then just as sadly began to paw at the meat. "You just need a good bath," Reverend Francis smiled. He dropped on one knee and scratched the dog behind the ears. "I'm gonna call you Puddin' Tane." Duke holstered his gun. "That," he said, "was not in the dossier." Thank you. That's all I've got. If you'd like to grab a copy from me, I'm selling these. I'm selling some coconut scented semi-truck air fresheners, as well as a pre-stamped postcard for you to send to all your friends.
That's right.
Come find me in the corner if you like.
That's right.
Thanks again.